I do believe that we are in a massive, massive shift. We are seeing the old paradigm crash around us. And this is the opportunity to rebuild our world from the grassroots up that looks at the planet holistically and includes every living thing. And it's not through the lens of corporations and greed, right? It's through the lens of love and equality and fairness and understanding that we are all interdependent and interconnected.
Welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast, brought to you by AmpCoil. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel, and on this show we discuss the common thread survivors share after walking through the fire, the practitioners making a difference, and the treatment modalities that deliver healing back into the hands of the people who need it most. Witness the inspiration we gain by navigating the human experience with grace, humility, and a healthy dose of mistakes. Because part of being human is being beautifully broken. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. I am here with the current mayor of Nevada City, Reinette Senum. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Freddie.
I'm so honored. I don't always get to do interviews live. It's a treat. It's a rarity. And if I could just paint the picture for everyone, we are nestled in Nevada City, California, which is, if you're driving out of San Francisco towards Tahoe, you're like an hour and a half away. Beautiful mountain landscape, fall foliage. There's a hummingbird outside. It's stunning here in this town if you haven't seen it.
It's a special place.
Let's talk about the special place. What is the magic of Nevada City? Because I've experienced it, but there's definitely a certain type of individual who settles here.
Right. Well, and you have to excuse me, I do have bronchitis, so I sound a little Kermit Frog. Nevada City. First of all, it's not easy to live here in that it's expensive, food and gas, and jobs aren't easy to come by, good paying jobs, I should say. But you move here for a community. And you move here for quality of life. And that's kind of like the compromise you're making. And so it's a very conscious choice to move here and to live here. I was raised here, but I lived in LA for 8 years and other places. And I've always known this was my place. I was, remember, 4 years old, driving up Broad Street in downtown Nevada City for the first time. And I literally remember looking at the beautiful, well-preserved, gold country Victorian homes and shops and saying, it's so magical. You know, little did I know someday I'd be the mayor of this place. But the buildings are what captured me first, right? This beautiful aesthetics of the town. But later on in life, it was the people and the spirit of the community that really captured me for good.
Mm-hmm. So when I go and there's, whether it's a cafe, it's hanging out at Elixart, or it's one of the local pubs, I always meet these incredible characters. It seems like everybody has a hand in making the world a better place here.
This is a town full of activists. To give you some history of Nevada City, it's pretty extraordinary. Nevada City is where the gold rush broke out, right? The 49er gold rush, and one of the places. And this location was in the 1850s, the third largest city in the state of California. It was after San Francisco, then Sacramento, then Nevada City, California. To give you an idea, the population today is 3,100. At that time in 1850, it was about 10,000 people living in little, miners' cabins and so on. What was extraordinary about Nevada City is this incredible history of ingenuity that is alive today, just this creative spirit and can-do spirit. And what has come out of Nevada City, to give you an idea, is, Pacific Gas and Electric, PG&E, was signed into existence in Nevada City because we had to have electricity down to the mines, right? Arm & Hammer, Levi Strauss, somebody had to have those blue jeans, right, for the miners. Wells Fargo, right, the banking. The 19th Amendment, which gave the women the right to vote, was actually penned in Nevada City by Senator Aaron Sargent, his wife Ellen, and their dear friend, a woman by the name of Susan B. Anthony. The Transcontinental Railroad was also written the bill was written in Nevada City. that kind of ingenuity and spirit has been here. So it was all, based upon gold mining, right? And interestingly enough, too, the first environmental regulation in the United States came from here. It was the Sawyer Act of 1876. We were doing what's called hydraulic mining. And what they were doing is we had so much water available to us that they had these gigantic cannons, and they were literally washing away the hillsides, washing them away, so much so that they removed 8 times the amount of the dirt that was removed out of the Panama Canal, washed down our beautiful, really well-known and beloved Yuba River. It polished the granite. It's one of the most beautiful rivers in the world because it's polished granite, ironically, by environmental damage. And all of that deluge, and we're talking arsenic and mercury and heavy metals, washed down the rivers into the farmland, into the delta, which ultimately created what was known as the Sawyer decision that led to the first environmental regulation stopping hydraulic mining. And so you are speaking to, well, there's a certain spirit, like everyone's involved in this community, everyone's engaged, and you do feel that sense. And that's one reason why I want to be mayor and city council member. I want to protect this little tiny town. It's a pearl in the Sierra foothills. But we are all standing on a lot of gold and crystal, actually, interestingly enough. And I've always had a hard time describing Nevada City spirit. And I could never find the right story or anecdote to be able to describe that. And then I came across a movie, a documentary, during what's called the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. It's a South Yuba River Citizens League, is the largest watershed organization in the country, and it's based here in Nevada City. We have the most nonprofits per capita in California. I'm not surprised by that. And they have this incredible Wild and Scenic Environmental Film Festival every January where the whole entire town opens up their doors to all the filmmakers and producers, and we actually house them, and we have 700 volunteers, all from local people. And quite a few years ago, they were showing a documentary about a couple that were traveling across by foot and canoe across Canada to get to their favorite home of their favorite author. And along the way, they came across the bird known as the loon, right? And the loon is very well known for its musical melodic songs. And a loon will, interestingly enough, will settle into its place and it will have its own particular song. It'll sing over and over and over again. It's like singing the sense of the place itself, right? And when that loon dies, the song will die with that loon. But what's most extraordinary is when another loon comes along and settles into the same place, it will pick up and begin to sing the exact same song and carry it on. And that is, to me, the story that represents the spirit of Nevada City.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow, I can feel that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got this song that, as you say, like generation and generation have almost picked up and continued to sing. We've got all these incredible events that have happened through the timeline of the city. And I've been very drawn to this place. Not only because I was brought out here to work with Amp Coil, but, right away I was like, there was something magical walking down Main Street. And I remember being here and thinking about, I was like, I could live here. Mm-hmm. So I even went around with a realtor. We looked at properties. And in the midst of this, being back east, and probably like the last 3 months in the news has been this rush of wildfires. And for people who don't know, in other parts of the world, they've actually preemptively shut off the power when the winds will start to increase in Nevada City. So you've had weeks of cumulative days of no power whatsoever.
No power. Actually, we've been set back into the dark ages. And why I say that is because not only do we not have power, but we've lost our landlines, including our copper lines, which would never go out before, our cell phones, our internet. Many have lost their sewage and their water, any way to actually heat their homes. And we're talking days on end, sometimes into a couple of weeks. It's like a hurricane might as well have hit the place. And this has been preemptive for PG&E. What they're basically doing is they're outsourcing and externalizing the risks and the responsibilities onto their customers. So instead of them being responsible of sparking a fire with their outdated and poorly maintained transmission lines, they're putting the responsibility on us. And now everyone has generators. I've got one in my backyard. Oh, right, we have fuel generators. Well, guess what? They're catching fire. They're setting homes on fire right now. And not only can you not call 911, you can't even call your neighbor for help. And you can't even, for some people, turn their water on to put the fire out because there is no water. And it has been so destructive that I actually personally went down to San Francisco a week ago Wednesday. And I do want to make this very clear that I only speak for myself and not for the city of Nevada City.
Of course.
For the city council members. But I did go down there as a representative of the city for this instance. And I spoke for the 3-minute public comment of the CPUC, which is the California Public Utility Commission, which is overseeing the investigation of PG&E and whether or not they've been responsible or not with how they've been operating themselves. And I went down there for 3 minutes to speak to them, to tell them the havoc they have wreaked on us. We have lost businesses. We have lost successful businesses. I'll give you an example. One business called Old Republic, award-winning brewery. They have a new restaurant they opened just this last year, and they had to close it. It killed them. Now they don't even know if they can keep the brewery going. We have manufacturers right in the height of busy season for the holidays. They've been folding different departments and arms of their manufacturing, hoping they can kind of keep the core alive. It's not just like, well, once the power turns back on, boom, you just go back into business. For restaurants and grocery stores, it takes them days to get their stock back in, their orders, their perishables, and to sit there for the grocery stores to, they can't just get a generator too, right? Getting a generator and connecting it to a grocery store takes building permits, right? And it takes months and costs literally $85,000, $100,000 to do something like this.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had businesses lose $125,000, $250,000 for some grocery stores. We've had businesses who know they're going to fold and they're just trying to stay on. Well, guess what? Tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., we're going to lose power again, and we don't know exactly when it's going to go back on again. And we were told only a few hours ago it'll be going off at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Well, we just got wind. No, it's going to be going off at 7 a.m. instead. People are feeling whiplashed. They're anxiety-ridden. They're stressed. We have employees who can't afford to pay their rent. And, it's brutal for the economy, the sales tax, the tax base for the city, what it does to the hospitals, medical facilities, the schools. The schools are just getting pummeled as far as what's normal for them and their snow days. It is a cascading domino effect that does nothing but hurt the people who've done nothing wrong, and again puts all of the responsibility on them. And PG&E, which is a monopoly, in my opinion, absolutely must be broken up and go away. Ultimately, I do believe this is a wonderful thing because we can turn this around to our advantage. And I can see that very clearly. The CPUC, I went and spoke with them for that 3 minutes. One of the commissioners wanted to speak to me. I talked with her yesterday on a conference call for about 45 minutes. And she wants me to actually go and speak at the bankruptcy hearings of PG&E, which I'm going to do, to talk about the harm that was done to our community, as well as the possible solutions, which are phenomenal.
So we have this instance of, and for people who don't know, in other parts of the world and across the country, why are they preemptively shutting down the power?
Well, first of all, I want to say that really, I think the community as a whole supports turning down the power, turning it off. And they call these PS events, power shutoffs. And we support that. But the problem is it's so broad and it is not targeted well enough that it'll be for days. And then they have to go and check every single line. We're talking thousands of miles of lines before they turn them on again. Well, this is not sustainable. And they're turning the power off so that a wind or a limb or a tree doesn't spark. And of course, with these high wind events, cause the winds to blow the fire and cause catastrophic fires that we've seen in Paradise, that we've seen in Santa Rosa, that we've seen in Malibu, right? These are the things that are happening. And Malibu, by the way, is not PG&E, I believe. So we understand that, but it's too broad and it's too wide and it has to be much more targeted. And they need, I keep saying you have smart cities, you have smart grids, you have all these smart devices, and you can't figure out when the wind is blowing. You can't put sensors on the lines. Sensors are called synchrophasers. Synchrophasers could have been attached to these lines many, many years ago, but instead, the money went to the shareholders, the money went to the CEOs, and they just didn't invest it into the maintenance and the upgrading of the transmission and the power lines. And so now they're just turning off the power altogether. And I've been in Africa without power. I know what that's like. And I feel like at times I'm living in Africa.
And so being solution-based,
right?
What are some of the things that can come to the table?
Well, PG&E is so big that basically rural areas like ours gets overlooked. And what our Nevada City and neighboring city, Grass Valley, and the county of Nevada, we're in California, by the way, it's Nevada County, California. And then we have what's called NID, which is Nevada Irrigation District. We like to all become our own one big power utility. And that's going to be quite a process, and it's going to take a few years, right? But the beauty in that is a couple things. One is we can maintain the power lines ourselves, and we can ensure they're maintained. We can make sure we keep the rates down, because right now, Nevada Irrigation District has hydropower. And the hydropower we actually sell to PG&E, and then for wholesale, and then they sell it back to us for retail, which is kind of crazy. So we can actually have it more to, just a little bit above wholesale price, which would be wonderful. So there's that. The other thing is that we can ensure that we are reinvesting that money into, again, the maintenance of the transmission lines, but also into the restoration of our forests.
So, I mean, this is where, we see these, we see that where it's so imperative that these small towns are taking a stand.
Yeah.
And you're really digging your heels in.
Yeah.
And it would be one thing if, as the mayor, I just want to pivot for a second. So we're talking about power, and we're talking about charging up the battery so everybody can keep the lights on and do the work and do the due diligence. And then we have another thing, because you can't just deal with one thing as mayor. Why is the power issue? We have the influx of fifth generation internet coming through the Nevada City area, which is already live in New York City, where I am. It's already live in San Francisco. It's testing in Houston. They're in DC. And, for just to catch people up on the show, if you haven't heard me talk about this before, fifth generation is
millimeter wave internet, and it does not do well with the human body. And there's been many large cities across the globe that have actually shut down testing and stopped many major cities, major countries across the world. But in the US, we pretty much just decided to flip the switch and just go for it. The FCC is basically forcing it onto us. And there are actual federal court cases right now that are being heard that might actually reverse that. So we're hopeful, right? But this is an amazing corporate power grab of what's called a PROW, or public right-of-way, where local authorities have no say or authority over these millimeter wave antennas. And they call them small cells, which is a misnomer. There's nothing small about them. They're as powerful as the cell antennas you see on buildings and mountaintops, but they're placed on your front step, on your lawn, on your sidewalk, and you can't do anything about it. And I'm telling you, I know, because I'm on many different email listservs, that there are people who have had these small cells placed on their front lawns on the sidewalk, and we are talking within days. And this is in Sacramento, as a matter of fact. Within days, the children who are sleeping in the front bedrooms of the home have to move to the back of the house.
Wow.
And then finally they have to move out of the house. And then they can't sell the house because nobody wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
And we have Switzerland just recently, I should say, they put 5G in there. And within days, people were having stillbirths. Later on, they were having birth defects. People were getting sick, nosebleeds, and people have literally taken to the streets. And to let you know, I'm not a Luddite. I'm not anti-technology. In fact, ironically, and this has been a very long personal journey, I had the first cellular phone store in Nevada County in 1990. It was called Empire Cellular. First storefront. I was selling the Motorola bag phone, and I saw a couple of red flags back then. When I started to sell the Motorola bag phone, I had to put a little antenna on top of the roof of a car, suction. This is how I'd install them with a cable that went in. You clip your Motorola bag phone, the actual handle, into the clipper. And I was told then, oh yes, you can never have the antenna inside the car because the car would be a Faraday cage and would hold that radiating signal within the car, which you don't want. And you don't want the antenna anywhere near your head. And the next year, boom, the Motorola TAC phone came out with this little antenna that would pull out, and you put it next to your head. And I said, well, wait a second. I thought this was dangerous. I thought this was bad.
Didn't we just say?
You just taught me how to, do this whole entire installation. Well, what changed? Nothing, except for greed. Greed was there. They just wanted to make the money. So that was the first red flag. And then at that time, I was very much an extreme adventurer, and I was looking forward to the day, what they call low orbiting satellites, where you could be on the top of a mountain or in a canyon. And if something goes wrong, you could call and say, hey, get me out of here. I was looking forward to that day, right? I thought it'd be wonderful. And they're just radio frequencies. What harm could be done? I was thinking. And I was told they were safe, and I believed that. Of course, I believed they were safe and they were tested for safety. I was wrong. They had never been tested for safety. If cell phones had been tested for safety, they would never have been released onto the market. Now you fast forward, I'm on city council. And again, I'm speaking for myself 100% personally. And my first term back in 2008 to 12, we had people coming to us talking about smart meters and needing to opt out and how they're sensitive, and it was sending them out of their homes. And I thought these were ultra sensitive people. It's not that I didn't believe them. I just thought they were ultra sensitive. And it was not until I had a smart meter put onto my home that unexpectedly, and I was looking forward to it, I started having these symptoms where I thought I had a brain tumor that fast. And what it was is when I would go to bed at night, I'd lay down. And as soon as I laid down, if any little slight noise was made, like my cat jumping onto my bed, the sound would reverberate in my head so loud it would startle me. And I couldn't sleep, and I was having anxiety, and it was just like something really is going on. I'm thinking I have a brain tumor. Well, a few weeks later, 4 weeks later, I get the PG&E bill in the mail, and there is this graph that clearly showed you my energy usage through the day. The graph would show you when I'd wake up in the morning, the graph would go up. It'd show you when I left at home, the graph would go down, right? That little line. When I return for lunch, when I come home at night, it'd go up, and then I go to bed at night. So basically, you, if you want to burglarize my home, could go into my mailbox, take my PG&E bill, and clearly see when I was sleeping at night and when I was not home in the day. And I was like, I don't want this. That's so risky. I can't believe they're doing that. They have since actually stopped doing it, by the way. So I called them up. I said, please take my smart meter away. I don't want this. That's ridiculous. A couple of weeks later, my brain tumor disappeared overnight. And I thought, what the heck just happened? How did that happen? And I thought, that's smart meter. Oh my God, that's smart meter. I went running out to where my meter was, and it was 15 feet from my head where I slept, and had been removed. That's when I realized there was something to, electromagnetic sensitivity, and I knew it was a real thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny to be on my side of it, where from the health and wellness and survivors and people with Lyme and mold, and we've been damaged a little bit, so we're very sensitive to the environment. And it's always about finding a necklace that will shield you, or a case for your phone, or it's building a Faraday cage around your bed that's going to be a nice little safe haven from the RF signaling. However, where this issue meets local government, that's why I'm so excited to have this interview.
Our hands are tied. The FCC, and people don't believe this when I say this, but Bill Clinton signed what's called the Telecommunication Act of 1996. And it literally said basically local governments, deciding bodies, cannot make any decisions based upon, environmental or physical damage. Since when did that happen? Since when can you not talk about the harmful physical effects of these things, right? When I tell people, they're like, no, that doesn't happen here. That happens in China. That happens in Russia. It's like, no, that's happening here in 1996 before we ever had any idea what EMFs were, or modems, right? Or the wireless world, or what internet was really going to, blow into. And what people don't realize is there's now this ubiquitous wireless, signal we're surrounded by 24/7. And it's actually in the last, and this is not an exaggeration, in the last 10 years, our exposure to wireless devices has gone up a quintillion times. That's 18 zeros. A quintillion times. We are literally, with all of us and our animals and the hummingbirds and the bumblebees and the insects, all of our lives are one gigantic biological experiment. We don't know how this is going to go. And I have to say, you do not have my consent.
Yeah, I like to tell people, remind them that it's an electrical body before it's a chemical one.
For sure.
So our electrical signaling is affecting all the downstream chemical. And when you go to a doctor for a snapshot of your blood work, which looks at a chemical reaction in the blood, nobody's really taking into account what's happening in the home environment.
Nope.
You can look at, and I think it's there's a couple towns in Sweden who have done this, and they've done studies in schools and just looked at basic test scores, which have jumped like 20 to 30% just by shutting off the Wi-Fi.
That's right.
Which is incredible. I mean, and it's really, I think, one thing that we need to consider is what it does to the developing brain.
Oh, it's much worse.
Because that brain is in, that brain, especially under 8, that brain is in a state of play. It's a different wavelength, and it's very susceptible to that Wi-Fi, or, we haven't even seen what 5G will do to that brain state.
No, in fact, it's the brain waves, as well as their cells are dividing much faster. So a cancer that would take us 20, 30 years to develop as an adult will take children 3 years or 5 years. And we're seeing this in the U.S. cancer registries. This is not just peer-reviewed studies that we have thousands of, by the way, thousands, less than the millimeter wave. Those are more military studies, but as far as studies from around the world, we have thousands. So when people say there's no studies, that's a corporate fabrication. And what we know is that we have seen a huge uptick in the deadly form of the brain tumor known as glioblastoma, and that was always reserved for 64 years and older, and it was rare. Now, those who are getting the most are 20 to 29-year-olds because they've had a cell phone to their head for 5 to 10 years. We are seeing prostate cancers skyrocket in 15 to 19-year-old boys because they have a phone in their pocket. Rectal cancer, colon cancer, breast cancer from the women who are putting into their bras. It's just, we're seeing the evidence, but what's happening and people don't realize is we're being war gamed. And this came out of a wonderful expose in The Nation about how this information has been held back from the public. And it's the same kind of tactic that the cigarette companies used, which is, and this was from a Freedom of Information request of Motorola, and we saw within their memos that they were going to war game the public. And there's 3 things you do to war game. One is you make sure to discredit any of the scientists who are not pro big industry. You make sure to place people who are pro industry onto the agencies and the boards, like, let's say, the World Health Organization, the FCC, and so on. And you make sure to, what's the last one? You make sure to basically send out misinformation. So as long as people don't really know what the facts are, they'll think they're safe.
There's a little bit of that going on right now in the world.
There's just a smattering. And so that's a great tactic. It worked before and it's working now. So that's what we're up against. But, and I do say to folks, I said, the sad thing is people ask, how do you think this is going to go? I said, well, I'll be really, really honest. Because this industry knew that if they waited long enough that they would get so many people addicted to their devices, because the radio frequencies are actually addictive. They knew they'd get everyone so addictive that when they heard the information, they would ignore it. That was by design. I said, sadly, my prediction is going to be this, is that we're going to see a lot of really, really young, beautiful people who are going to die some really painful deaths from different cancers. And we're going to, for a long time, ignore the warnings until a lot of young people are dying, kind of like the AIDS epidemic, where you just don't think you need to have safe sex or wear a condom until all of your young, beautiful friends are dying around you. And then you're like, you know what? I need to wear a condom. Well, that's what's going to happen here. We're going to realize that, yeah, you can have a phone, but it's all about harm reduction. You don't have it in your pocket. You don't have it turned on 24/7. You don't have it in your bedroom. Keep it away from your bedroom. Have it turned off at night. And you make sure that you only use it when you need it. But from what I can tell, the trajectory that we're heading in is that we're going to have to see a real high, sad death rate before it sinks in.
Yeah. So let's pivot back to that. So solution-based, in this area,
right?
Like, what can you do in Nevada City, and as a leader,
right?
What things can you put in place?
Well, I mean, first of all, one of the things I do is I educate people constantly. This is this is a drum I'm beating on Facebook regularly. I annoy people, but I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but I love you and I don't want you to die. The other thing you do is a wireless ordinance, which is something that we've been trying to hammer out here in Nevada City. It's been quite contentious, I have to say. But I believe in the end we'll be able to do that. And that's a way to basically protect yourself as much as you possibly can within current law. But I do believe that the federal courts will ultimately, go in our favor. So we're just waiting for that.
Mm-hmm. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really honored that you took 30 minutes to talk with us.
It's been my pleasure.
And I think it's fascinating because, I'm always looking, again, it's like where do you bring the things into the home, the tools, the technology to mitigate some of these things,
Right.
but to see where it's happening on
The local level.
Local level and the law, and that there are people like you looking out for us and humanity in the county.
Right.
And, I would ask you, I'm going to close up with two questions.
Mm-hmm.
That I always end the podcast with, but I've skipped the last two. So what is it, the Beautifully Broken podcast? What does it mean to you to be beautifully broken?
Well, I think to be beautifully broken is to have the most amazing opportunity to start anew. And to be beautifully broken allows light to shine into you, and it allows your light to shine out.
Okay, and now you've got 2 minutes to activate anybody that wants to support you.
Oh, interesting.
And how would they do that? Whether they're here in Nevada City or whether they're on the other side of the world, how can they support you in your community and your mission, your voice?
Right. Well, there's a couple of different things you can do. One is if you want to get to know me better, you can go to my own personal website just to see some blogs I've had and some of my history and personal adventures and things and what I stand for and what I believe in. And that is called thefoghornexpress.com. And don't forget the THE, thefoghornexpress.com. That's a good way. You can reach me there. And then you could always email me. And I can give that email out. It's Reinette Senum. So it's REINETTE, then Senum, SENUM, Senum @gmail.com. And you could always just Google Nevada City, California, and look at the mayor. And sometimes they still have me as the vice mayor. It's not current on the internet all around for some reason. But reach out to me because I do believe that we are in a massive, massive shift. We are seeing the old paradigm crash around us. It is really becoming beautifully broken. And this is the opportunity to rebuild our world from the grassroots up that looks at the planet holistically and includes every living thing. And it's not through the lens of corporations and greed, right? It's through the lens of love and equality and fairness and understanding that we are all interdependent and interconnected.
We are all one. Reinette, from the light inside me to the light inside you, thank you for being here.
It's been my pleasure.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Ladies and gentlemen, you made it to the end of the podcast. Now, in a world where the average attention span is less than 10 seconds, we just spent almost an hour together. And I think this is the beginning of something really beautiful. Now, one way to support the podcast is to head over to FreddieSetGo.com and check out my newly launched page, Freddie's Faves, where I've linked every 5-star product and healing modality you hear about on the show. Most offer significant discounts by clicking the link. And please know, it doesn't cost you anything extra, and at the same time, they support the show through affiliation. So, check out Freddie's Faves on FreddieSetGo.com. This episode of the Beautifully Broken podcast was brought to you by our sponsor, AmpCoil, upgrading the vibrations of hearts, minds, and bodies all over the world. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, head over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review. Grabbing a download is like giving this virtual thumbs up that we're doing it right. And if you want to connect with me, shoot me a message on Instagram at FreddieSetGo.com or at FreddieSetGo. That's all for today. Our closing. The world is hurting. We need you at your very best. So take the steps today to always be upgrading, whatever it takes to move the needle. Remember, while life is pain, putting those fractured pieces back together is a beautiful process. I'm your host. I love you. Namaste. Have a wonderful day.